Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and today we have the privilege of speaking with Manuel Martinez, a remarkable entrepreneur and veteran who has made significant strides in the field of human resources. Manuel served for 8 years in the U.S. Navy as an E5, where he completed three deployments to Africa, South America, and Europe with various U.S. Marine units. His journey from a young landscaper in Miami, Florida, to the founder of Omni HR, a pioneering HR services and software company, is nothing short of inspiring. Manuel's military career began at 17 when he enlisted as U.S. Navy reservist. He quickly accumulated a wealth of experience, ultimately driving his life with a sense of purpose and direction. His service as a Fleet Marine Force corpsman not only broadened his horizons but also instilled a mission first mindset that has been pivotal in his post military career. After transitioning to civilian life, Manuel pursued an MBA and discovered a passion for human resources, a field he had unknowingly been involved in throughout his career. This realization led him to establish Omni HR in 2022, a full spectrum professional employer organization aimed at helping small to medium sized businesses thrive by providing comprehensive HR services. Manuel's core values, action over feelings, the importance of outward actions, and the relentless perseverance have guided him through his entrepreneurial journey. His dedication to building high performing teams and creating a standardized platform for HR functions has set a new benchmark in the industry. Join us as we delve into Manuel's incredible journey, exploring his military experiences, the challenges he faced during his transition, and his relentless pursuit of excellence in the field of human resources. So let's dive in and warmly welcome Manuel Martinez, a true embodiment of what it means to be a strategic veteran. Manuel, dude, thanks for being here, man. It's
Hey,
great to
thanks for
have you.
having me. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, dude. So let's jump right in, man. Let's talk about like your early life. What inspired you to join the Navy? I know, but the audience doesn't know yet. So let's talk about that. Growing up in Miami, and I imagine there's probably a pretty good Navy presence down there, right? So were you seeing that
Not
growing up?
not really, honestly. It was actually pretty interesting. My family, they were actually all born in Cuba, and then I was actually the first person in my family born here in the States. Originally, I was actually going to try to join the army, but the recruiter wasn't there, and you know how those recruiters, they are quick.
Yep.
Yep,
The
for
sharks,
sure.
right?
So
Yeah. Yeah, swimming around the because is it the same? Like my recruiting office, it was all branches were in the same building, literally doors across the hall from each other. Is that kind of what you experienced
yeah,
down there
no,
in Miami?
100%. It was actually over in, Altamont. So I was born in Miami, we moved up towards, like, the Orlando area, so people know, like, Central Florida. But, yeah, it was really just honestly, I just wanted to get out of, home as fast as possible, and then from there, I didn't wanna go the college route, and I felt that the military was kind of the best route for me, and that's kinda what I wanted to do. So I ended up getting, conned in, jumped in into the Navy, signed up. FMF was part of the contract, which I was super super excited about, and yeah, it was honestly a really good decision for me at the time.
Yeah, man. So growing up, you got your first job at 11 doing under the table landscaping, and there's a whole lot of that here. It seems like, right? Like landscaping everywhere. So why 11 years old for your first job? Was it nature of, the family needs money, you have to contribute? Was it just, your family trying to instill some kind of discipline in you? Like who's working at 11 years old?
I gotcha. It was kind of a mixture. I would say it was certainly the family. My mom was a single mom taking care of me as the only child. She, like I said, born in Cuba, so kind of a different household structure than I guess the common US one. And it kind of gave me the idea of like, hey, like, you've got to start making money, you've got to start doing stuff early on. Rent isn't going to pay for itself. She actually paid for herself to go through schooling, got her master's degree, and then from there, actually, now she has her doctorates in occupational therapy. So like she was a great example of like, hey, you got to just do what you got to do, and you got to make it happen. It doesn't matter. So it was a great way for me to see it from an early on that, hey, money talks. You got to do what you got to do.
Dude, so and then you went into your first official job at 15 and you were a Spanish speaking activities assistant at a nursing home. What did that do to kind of inspire you to become? I know you said you wanted to be a medic in the army. You ended up a corpsman in the Navy, and I'll tell you, I think you ended up on the better route. Just my experience with corpsmen, they're phenomenal medics, and I would have taken a corpsman. No offense to my army brothers that were medics because they did a great job, but you guys' training is off the charts. So do you think that that job at 15 kind of inspired you and those experience to be a corpsman?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, it was, I would say, the first like inside look into medicine that I got to see, because I got to see kind of all the therapy sessions. I got to see the people kind of going through it. And it was really, really interesting to me, and something that kind of I took for the rest of my time frame, and it kind of pushed me forward wanting to do more in medicine.
Man, that's yeah, I can imagine because nursing homes, depending on which one you get into, like some of them are great and some of them are kind of sad, man. It's sad how they treat our the elderly in our community. And so joined the Navy, knew you didn't want to go to college. Similar story for me, right? Like just knew I didn't want to go to college. And I think it's gonna be an interesting question later on as we talk because you now have an MBA, which is a lot of college. So you know in the Navy, you shipped to boot camp, and was that challenging for you? Like were you looking to test yourself, or did you just simply want out and you were going to do whatever it took to get out?
I just wanted to get out. At the time, I didn't have the best household, situation, just a lot of honestly, I was just not the best kid. Like, I'll be completely honest, it was just all on me. And just a giant headache for my mom at the time, and I was like, "I can't be here. If I stay here, I'm either gonna go to prison or do something that I shouldn't." And I ended up deciding the Navy or the military was really just the best route for me, and it was. It kind of got me on more of a straight and narrow path than I was at the time.
Yeah, for sure. And so what was boot camp like for you? Like were you an athlete growing up, or did the kind of the early job experience kind of give you, the tools you needed to be able to survive boot camp? Because I know like I also joined at 17, was delayed entry for a year, and then shipped like basically 2 weeks after I turned 18. So I might as well still been a child, right? And I had no life experiences, and I did see a lot of people, they didn't have like the mental faculties to make it through, and I didn't think it was that hard, mainly because I was a three sport athlete in high school, right? So what was your experience like?
Well, I'll say my instructor, they were like, "You're either gonna leave here strong, you're gonna leave here smart." And I left stronger than I was smart. I wasn't necessarily an athlete when I went in. I was actually pretty fat. I'm gonna be honest. I was a slacker from the drop. Barely passed everything, but I'm cool getting yelled at. It like them yelling at me was like a joke to me. I was like, "Ah, I've been yelled at my entire life. Like I've had 18, 17 years of this. You yelling at me, you mean nothing to me." So to me, yeah, it was a joke. Like it wasn't a serious to me, boot camp wasn't hard, but you're absolutely right. A ton of people had a really hard time with it. Like they couldn't deal with the stress of being alone. I was like, I've got a cot that's mine. I've got my own little space. I've got some people to hang out with. Like this is chill.
Well, I think like too for me, right? Like I grew up in a broken home. My mom wasn't the greatest person to me. A lot of issues going on back and forth there, right? Like which pushed me to want to get out also, right? Growing up in southern Indiana, I wanted out, and you wanted out too. And I think growing up like that, the people that I saw quitting basic training were the people who were probably, I don't know, for lack of a better word, like coddled growing up. They were just spoiled, born with a silver spoon in their mouth, don't know what any kind of struggle is. So it's like the first time that they have some kind of struggle. Do you think that's probably what was going on like when you were going to basic training as well?
Yeah, 100%. Everyone that couldn't make their life was so easy up to that point. They hadn't gone through enough hardship that that was the hardest thing that they've been through. Like for us, like you go through so much beforehand. Once you get there, this is the easy part, you know?
Yeah, yeah, because I remember too, like, you could yell at me all day long, and it's just like, dude, like, this is funny, actually. Like, you're just yelling obscenities at me, and like, you just don't realize, like, this has been my life growing up. Like, this doesn't phase me, because I was the same. I was a strong private. I was not a smart private. I did a lot of push-ups, a lot of burpees, a lot of monkey fuckers. You know what I mean? Like, I had to learn everything the hard way, and I had a mouth too, and it got me in trouble a couple of times, but what year did you join?
I went in right out of high school, so 2013.
Okay, so 2013, right smack dab in the middle of a 20-year war, and all of your deployments are to Africa, South America, and Europe. So talk to us about those deployments. Like, how did you end up avoiding the Middle East as a corpsman, especially like, 2008 to really 2014ish was like the height of the surge and all of that, right? So like bodies were important over there. Lots of dudes needing medical attention all of the time. So, how did it not work out that you didn't end up over there?
Yeah, it was really weird because the weirdest part is I pushed to go and they just wouldn't send me. It was a very strange thing. But as a reservist, basically, I went through boot camp. I went immediately to my A school, which was over in Texas. Finished that. Then I went to my C school, which was to be connected to a Marine unit that was over in North Carolina, over at Camp Lejeune. And then from there, I go back to Florida, and then you're basically a civilian who just hangs out on the weekends, which wasn't what I was looking for. The only reason why I went in as a reservist is because my recruiter told me that I could go in as a reservist, go in as soon as like next month after signing and after going to MEPS. And then from there, it's super easy to transition to active duty. And I was like, awesome, because the only active duty billet would have been like a 6 month to a year. I'd have to wait to go to boot camp. So waited. Ended up saying I don't want to wait anymore. Just send me in as a reservist. I'll transfer later, and they dumped me into a fourth medical battalion, which was kind of like a holding zone. Um, so it's part of a Marine unit, but it's a non-deployable unit. So they don't actually go anywhere or do anything. So on all three of my deployments, I was the only person from my unit that like left my unit to attach to different units. So my unit never deployed. I individually deployed away from my unit.
Damn, man. And it's pretty common, right, for corpsmen to be attached to Marines. All Marine units get their line medics basically from the Navy, correct?
Yes, so the Marines don't have their own medical at all. They're actually the only branch that does that. Every other branch has their own internal medicine. The Marines specifically use corpsmen and Navy like physicians and nurses, and the O's and all of those all go with the Marines. Yeah.
For sure. And what were your deployments like? Like, so which was were these listed in order first of all, and because there's a significant event that happened on your first deployment that you give credit to changing your life essentially, right?
Yeah. Well, on the first deployment, I had my daughter. Yep. So baby number one, and it actually happened as we were about to ship out, or I guess we technically were already out doing our pre-deployment training, and my unit was at the time nice enough to let me go back home so I could see the birth and then immediately ship out the next day, which was very bittersweet because I got to go home for a day and then immediately fly back out. But hey, they paid for the ticket, so they paid for me to fly in, see the baby, see the birth, and then immediately fly out. So that was really nice of them to handle that for me.
Yeah. And where was this deployment to?
That one was in Mexico. So for that one, we were located in Mexico as well as the Bahamas. We were doing counter narcotic operations, training Mexican Marines.
Nice, nice. So your daughter's born, and you said that you started taking life more seriously, started driving your life and not just cruising through it. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Basically, almost a dropout. I had to make up one Saturday school, and I slept in, and I literally almost didn't graduate high school because of it, because I kept skipping class and was almost failing. So basically, think of like the bottom of the barrel slacker. Uh, and then tried college after I came back from the military the first time, did like maybe four classes, failed three of them. And so just not there, right? Like not the guy that you're looking to help you in anything. Almost dropped out of A school because I just wasn't studying, wasn't actually taking the medicine, like the actual job I was gonna do seriously. So just all around a slacker, like 100%. No shame in my game. And then after I had my first daughter, I realized like, well, now it's not just me. Like if I mess up, it's not just on me anymore. Now I actually have someone that I need to take care of. And that kind of gave me the realization like, all right, well, I can't keep doing what I was doing. So there on the deployment, I actually started taking my classes again and actually started really focusing, started planning for the future, started considering what I needed to do, and basically shifted everything from a I don't care anymore, this doesn't matter, to well, shit, I guess now I have to care and this does matter. And from there, I jumped in and 4.0 GPA after that.
Yeah, so you were just kind of just meandering around, just whatever, and then all of a sudden you decided to take control of your life and actually be present and live it, for something bigger than yourself, essentially. That's incredible, man. What were some of the key takeaways you learned from your deployments, to Africa, South America, and Europe? And did you have any moments that were, I don't know, kind of what you expected to see had you been in the Middle East, at the time?
Um, it was, let's see, what did I learn from it? I would say definitely understanding that you were the sole responsibility for your team. That was a really, really big shock to me. And not necessarily a shock, but I always considered I was going to have like an officer there, like some higher level medical practitioner there that was going to be able to like help me out and cover me as well as the team. I was dropped off on an island, and on that island, I had my team as well as the Mexican Marines that I was in charge of, and I was the only medical personnel, and no one else was to get any medical resources unless we evac them through a boat to then a truck convoy to the nearest level 3 hospital, which is not a good hospital to be at down in Mexico. Uh, so I was it. I was the only medical personnel for our entire team, and they wouldn't get anyone else to help them out for hours. So that was a really, really big shock for me because at the time I was 20 years old. So being 20 and then having that level of responsibility thrown at you, and there's no other option. Like it's not like you can say, "Nah, I think I'm good." Like that's it. You either jump in and you make it work or you don't. So my IDC at the time, which is independent duty corpsman, basically think of like the person who's in charge of our medical team. He was like, "I trust you. You've got that island," and I was like, "All right, well, I guess I got the island." And from there, it's really just manning up and taking care of your shit. Like you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, do you think that did a lot to boost your confidence in your own abilities and kind of, I don't know, inform, some decisions that you would make later in life?
Absolutely, it taught me that I could do whatever I set my mind to, and it sounds kind of like a joke because it's so overly told. But when you have no other option and your back's against the wall, that's it. Like you have to do it. Like there's no other opportunity. There's no way to back out. You either do it or you don't. But if you don't, then guess what? Everyone is shit out of luck. Like it's not like it's something that you can kind of skirt the issue. You got to deal with it head on. So facing the issues forward, learning as much as I could, dealing with everything as it came, and viewing everything as well as a learning experience. They all knew that it was still my first time. It was my first deployment. I already had all those worries and all those concerns. Um, but I had a great team with me. Like I was with the first deployment was um, sorry, Force Reconnaissance. It was with Fourth Force. So I mean, they were a great group of guys, and they definitely helped me out as well going through it. A lot of them had done multiple deployments previously, so they were very, very helpful. Um, and all of our independent duty corpsmen and all of our groups, everyone was a great team. So I was very, very blessed for that first team.
Yeah, being around a bunch of Force Recon Marines with, I mean, tons of deployment experience, probably a lot to the Middle East, right? Doing the drug interdiction stuff, right? You got some shit hot guys around you. That's an awesome feeling because they're not going to let you fail, right? Like there's just so much knowledge there that you can run to and pick up on, and it's kind of one of the cool things about the military, right? Like you're dropped on this island to be in charge of everything medical. I remember getting to my first unit and something similar happened to me. Not the stakes aren't nearly as high, but like, show up, and I have till the end of the day to figure out how to get all of these radios wired into this Humvee that we will be taking overseas with us. And I have never touched any of this equipment ever before. Like, I'm an infantry dude. Like, I'm not supposed to be doing commo. We don't have commo guys. So it's like, figure it out, dude. And if you don't figure it out, like, that's it. You're done, kind of deal. So, holding your feet to the fire and just being thrown in head first, it really is a good way to learn. And the military does that a lot.
Yeah, yeah, it's all on the job training, it's all trial by fire, but it's a great way to learn because you really find out who it is that's like the diamond in the rough and who it is that can handle it, and you find out who can't because not everyone can.
Yeah, man. What was it like for you, having gone through your A school and all of this, right? Really being a Navy corpsman and then getting attached to Fleet Marine Force and all that stuff. Like, was there a little transition there for you, or did you just kind of just get in there and fit right in because that's what's expected of corpsmen? You kind of knew that was what was going to happen.
Yeah, I think the really nice thing was because of the direct transition. So I went from, boot camp directly to my A school, directly to the C school, which is basically like a mini Marine Corps boot camp. That's kind of just how I say it because you learn a little bit about like close quarters combat. You learn a little bit more about like, emergency medicine, and you learn a little bit more about like combat medicine. So you kind of learn more about the infantry and you learn more about like their group directly, and that really gives you kind of the prep before you jump right in. And when you jump in, it's really just a normal group of guys. Like at the end of the day, whatever unit you go with, they're just guys, you know what I'm saying? Or, women, but they're just people that you join, you talk to, and you get used to. Like it's nothing super super scary, or it's nothing like that I think I needed too much time to get accustomed to. You just jump in, you have some beers, and you go for it.
Right. Yeah. No, and it makes sense that they would send you some kind of like C school, right? You said it's like a mini Marine basic training because like the Marines philosophy, everybody's a rifleman. Like everybody has to know how to fight, right? Like very much not the case in the Army. Like that they don't teach a lot of tactics to the softer skill MOSs, and not everybody's a rifleman. I think there's been some stories over the years that will kind of prove that coming out of the Army, but that's awesome that they take care of you like that. And so, what was the most pivotal moment during your military service that kind of influenced your path and personal growth to kind of that you latch onto now and use in what it is that you're doing with your life now?
Gotcha. I would say it's a mixture. To me, I really liked the training portion and the mentorship aspect. Going into I was always the youngest guy in the room. Like, jumping in right out of high school, trying to join as many deployments as I could, doing all those things. I was always the young guy in the group. I was always the young guy in the team. And I was very blessed because every deployment I did, it was always small teams. Like I never had like a giant battalion that I was attached to. It was always very small groups. Like when we were out there overseas, we all just called each other by our first names. You know what I'm saying? Like we pushed through, ranks was kind of put to the side, and you did the job. And I really really liked that, and I took that on, and I think that I took that as well as all the training and all the knowledge that I took, and I just try to share that as much as I can. Whenever I went back to 4th Medical Battalion, like my home unit back in the States, um, all I did was just try to train. All I did was just try to tell people what they could learn, how much they could learn, and all the different opportunities that were out there. And if they really wanted to do it, they could do it. Like it's right there. Like if you want to jump on a deployment, I'll show you how. If you want to go and use some of these military platforms to help your civilian life, I'll help you how. And that knowledge and that like want to help people, I think is what really drew me into human resources and what drew me into what I'm doing now.
Nice. So what are you, because you're a reservist, right? So between deployments, you're technically a civilian and then you're playing Navy on the weekends and what like a 1 month a year or something like that. I think that's how it goes. So what are you doing in your civilian life to support you? Because obviously 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year is not enough to keep you going. So what are you doing between deployments in your for your career or whatever that I assume probably inspired the founding of Omni HR.
Yeah, well, at that time frame, it was I was working at UPS as a supervisor, And I was also doing, well, that was like the big thing. I was working at UPS, and one of the things that made me so comfortable there is that they had an unlimited military leave. So I basically could go on as many deployments as I want, and they would be like, "All right, we'll see you when you get back." So I was very comfortable there. Just exactly, I was very comfortable just hanging out doing that. And not until after the second deployment was I like, "All right, let's start seeing what else is out there and start kind of pushing forward." And at that time, I was really in the pre-med route. So I really wanted to be a physician. That was actually the path that I wanted to go on. I wanted to continue in medicine as a corpsman. Um, and it kind of just transferred because on my third deployment, I'm sorry, my second deployment, I finished my pre-med. And from there, I started applying to schools for my actual doctorate, like to continue on my medical training, and they wouldn't accept it. All of them were saying that you need in-person labs, you need in-person schooling. They wouldn't accept any of my online material, and because of that, I was like, I'm not redoing all this. Like, I'm not doing this all over again. I'll get my MBA and I'll just push that way. And I ended up going into my MBA on my third deployment. And that's kind of one of my classes were about human resources. And I learned so much that the things that you already do in the military, the things I was already doing in UPS and as a leader, that's what HR does. You know, mentoring, training and development, picking your team, making sure that they know what it is that they're doing, making sure that your team is happy and they're content, that you have communication, making sure that there is a structured way to evaluate how well they're doing and how they can improve. You know, that's all just classic military stuff that we do anyways. You know, at least if you have a good leader and you have a good team, then that's stuff that you should be doing anyways. And that's what ended up really helping me realize, like, this is it. This is what I want to do. And that's what I did. I ended up taking it and I jumped in to a nonprofit. And with that nonprofit, I ended up starting off as an HR generalist, eventually actually becoming the CEO of that nonprofit after 2 years.
Man, that's impressive. Good for you. That's a big change to get slapped in the face, basically, because I'm sure you worked your ass off in pre med, right? And to add to that, you're doing that while you're deployed, which I know is not easy. I tried college at one point when I was in the army, not even deployed, and particularly as an infantryman, it's just not going to happen because you're always in the field. I remember I had to go to the commander to get him to sign off on the TA to pay for the classes, and then 2 weeks later, oh, you're going to the to NTC for 6 weeks. And I had to go right back to the commander and be like, sir, I need you to sign this so I can drop these classes because there's no way, right? Like this, and this was all before, we had internet basically everywhere. So I was, my college classes were real books and like fill in the bubble stuff. Like it was strange. And so it's impressive that you get through pre-med, but what were you feeling? Were you frustrated at all, or was it really an easy decision for you to switch to MBA and just kind of give up not going through all that stuff again?
No, I was livid. Yeah, no, it felt like I just wasted all my time in school. It felt like I'm not able to use my medical knowledge that I had. I had always wanted to do medicine, like from the very beginning, since I was young. Like medicine and entrepreneurship was my passions, and the fact that I'm basically being told that everything that I did up to that point was for nothing, that pissed me off. Yeah, no, it was not a very easy transition. I ended up getting over it and realizing like it is what it is. Uh, but yeah, no, I was pissed. Yeah.
I believe it, man. I would have been pissed too. What was it you think that stopped you from, like, why did you stop yourself from going back and doing all of that again? Was it just so daunting, or you just knew you just didn't have what it takes to get it all done again? Like what kind of led you to that decision?
It was a mixture. A big part of it was that I just didn't wanna do it all over again. Like, the fact that these schools are saying that the work that I did wasn't valuable to them made me kinda discredit them as an educational organization. You know, like, I went through all this training, I learned all this knowledge, I went through all this practical application. I'm literally doing more medical work than all of these people going in, and that they won't even look at the application. that's telling me that they're not what I'm looking for. Like that's not the kind of place that I want to be at. And so from there, that was really it. I just had to understand. Like I basically told myself like it's not worth it. Like if that's what it's gonna look like, if that's the type of like program that I would have to be a part of to redo, that's not the kind of place that I want to be at in this stage of my life.
And they were telling you basically you didn't qualify because you didn't do the labs in person? Was that like the big hang up, or were you gonna have to do the entire pre-med thing all over again?
It depends on the school. So each school had different like curriculum, and they had different specifics on what they needed. Some of them were just labs. Typically the lower end schools were like, "Oh, just redo all of your labs." But that's like almost a full year plus some of schooling because that would include like in biology, like a simple class that had labs. And so you couldn't just do the labs of that. You'd have to take the entire class in person. So you'd have to basically redo more than like 40% of my degree. And I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, and it's mind blowing to me because, when I got out and went to college, they gave me a bunch of credits for a bunch of shit I did in the army that I didn't see how they translated to these credits. And they weren't willing to, you're actively, being a corpsman in the Navy. And anybody in the military knows corpsmen are the best. You want the corpsmen, right? Like they just have the best training, unless, short of a special operations, medic and 18, I think they're, what are they, deltas, or I can't remember, but those guys, right? Like you guys have phenomenal training and they're not willing to give you any credit for any of that.
Well, nah, not really. Like, depending on, for example, like independent duty corpsman, you're basically like a physician assistant. You are able to administer medicine. You're able to go through all the steps, diagnose, provide, all the medical, you know, treatments
Stuff,
that you
yeah,
could dream
all of
of.
it.
Yeah. Uh, and that would be like equivalent to like a lower level nurse in the civilian side. And so from there, it's a completely different ball game. You're not able to do all the same stuff. You would still have to go back to school and then do an additional 2 years, even if you've been doing it for 20 years and you literally know as much as some of these physicians. It's kind of just one of those transitions, and I'd also understand it. I do get it when it comes to medicine. Like you can't take the risk, because if you learn something wrong in the field, and obviously the combat medicine that I learned doesn't directly translate, unless I'm like in Detroit or I'm in a place where like combat medicine is the medicine. um I do understand that when it comes to medicine, you can't necessarily take the risk of anticipating someone doesn't know what they're doing. But it's not like I was saying, just give me a doctorate and I'll jump in. Like it was to jump into a program for continued education. So, you know, it's
It
kind of
is
just
what
one
it
of
is,
those.
right? You just kind
Yeah.
of, the universe said that it wasn't supposed to be, put you on a different path, and that's awesome. So let's move into your transition, man. You got out after what, 5 years?
8.
8 years as an E5. That's what it was. So, what led you to the decision to get out? Was it family? Was it, other circumstances? Were you just kind of over it? What was it?
I actually have a really, really bad story on me getting out. Basically, as a reservist, you have a home unit, right? And you can drill and do all these things at your home unit. Well, I was up after my 8 years, I was up to choose another unit. There was a unit down in West Palm Beach, Florida, which was called Anglico. They're a higher speed unit. They do deploy more. They get jump wings. Like they have a lot more opportunity to get JTAC school and things. So I was all about it. I have multiple deployments. I'm qualified. I wanted to jump in. I put in for that billet. I got it. I started drilling down there for around 6 months. Throughout my entire time there, no one was mustering me. So on paper, it looks like I've not worked for the military for 6 months.
Oh
And I
shit!
didn't find out. Yep. And I didn't find out until I went to my the a unit that's closer by, over in Orlando, and they were like, "Oh, you're AWOL for 6 months. You're actually about to be separated from the military with a dishonorable discharge." I said, "What are you talking about? I've been working." And Anglico, they don't do 1 week in a month. They'll do like a 6 day once a month. So they don't do like it's not a shorter one, it's actually a longer one. So I was doing a longer time, spending more time down there, and it's like a 3-hour drive from my house. So I was doing all this just for them to be like, "Hey, we don't even know who you are." And I was like, "I don't know what is happening." Basically, what ended up happening is some random blue side unit over in like Washington ended up just being like, "We want him." They picked me up, didn't tell anyone, and they've been marking down that I've been AWOL because I haven't been showing up. And I didn't get any phone calls from them. I didn't get any messages or anything. My home unit, the unit that I've been with for 7 years, they didn't help me at all. The new unit, the Anglico unit, they didn't help me at all. And then this Washington unit, they didn't help me at all. And after getting screwed over by 3 different groups, I was like, I think I'm done. I think the fact that no one's got my back after I've done all this with the military is unacceptable. I've been with one unit for literally 7 years, and they basically told me to go fuck myself. And
That's
yeah,
sad,
that's
man.
not.
That's so sad. So here's like a main challenge from your transition is you have no support behind you. Like you've been showing up and it's really hard for them not to notice if you're there for 6 days every month that like that should have been really easy for somebody with some kind of rank to be like, yeah, this dude's been here for every single drill that we've ever done. Like it's a simple phone call and a piece of paper, right?
Yeah, no, it should have been very, very simple, but it wasn't. I ended up finally getting it taken care of. I did get my honorable discharge, and I was all squared away. But yeah, no, I had to do it all myself, which is actually one of the very common things when it comes to reservists. When you're active duty, like people cover you at least a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Like everything's taken care of. You've got a group that you are attached to, and like that's your group. When it's reserves, it's not really the same. Like you have people that are just like you that do this once a weekend, and they're the ones that are in charge of you. It's kind of a different dynamic. You don't have someone who this is their only job, they care about you. It's more of like, well, I'll care about you on the weekend that I'm here, and other than that, I don't care about you at all.
Yeah, I kind of disagree with what you said. Like in active duty, around the time I was getting out in 15, there wasn't a lot of help for us either. It was really figure a lot of things out. It's been my experience since I've been out trying to, there's a lot of other money that's available other than VA disability. CRSC is one of them, combat related special compensation. That was like a 5-year process for me trying to figure that whole thing out, not getting help from other people. Some bonus money in the way of back when I joined, it was called Army College Fund. Now, with the post 9/11 GI Bill, all that's changed. I had to go and figure out, I'm still trying to figure out where that Army College Fund money is because, the Army, most of the civilians who control all of that in the education department, they haven't been there long enough to know what that even is, so they're all like confused. So I totally get it, man. So you've got this giant, 3 units trying to basically bend you over and fuck you with no lube going through your transition. So talk about your transition a little bit and the challenges that you faced in transitioning out of the Navy, and maybe it wasn't as difficult. I don't know because I assume you're doing deployments, so you're living a pretty active duty lifestyle. So I, I would assume that you've got some stuff that you're going to have to deal with, right? The identity problems, the purpose, that kind of stuff. Whereas maybe some other, had you just stayed at that unit and never deployed, it probably would have been a pretty easy decision. It wouldn't have been as rough. So talk about your transition and some of the things that you went through.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say one of the biggest things was that kind of sense of purpose, going out, doing these things, having the team with me, and, having like kind of brothers with me that I could work with and do. And I knew that what I was doing mattered. And then going to like UPS and taking care of packages and stuff like that. It's it was certainly that was certainly one of the challenges. It was all right, well, now that I'm done with this stage of my life, well, what is my new big boy career going to be? What do I want to be when I grow up? And it kind of became one of those conversations. The medicine didn't work out, the military didn't work out because I wanted to do 20 years, and I was going to re-enlist with the new unit. And after that, I now have a bad taste in my mouth from something that I just spent 8 years towards. it was more of a challenge of not necessarily doing the things, but figuring out what the next step was going to be. I'm now a dad, I am a husband, I am now an individual who had a plan, and that plan has all completely been torn to shreds. So, what's the next step? And that's when I ended up deciding to continue on with the MBA and decide to continue on with the HR and the entrepreneurship life.
Yeah, man. And I want to read what you wrote on the little questionnaire when you came on. You said being on a deployment or active duty is very simple. It may not be easy, but you know what's expected of you and you handle your tasks. For you, the military was like having goggles on and only seeing what was in front of you. But civilian life is like taking the goggles off and seeing just how many options there are. Then being frozen because there's so many options versus being told what to do one task at a time. To me, that is spot on, man. It's just like that because you're in this fixed, just narrow. Somebody is telling you what to do at all times. Like for me, example, I know at 5 a.m. I have to be in the war room of the company for the company meeting. I know that at 6:30 it's PT formation and we're going to do PT till 8 o'clock. I know first call for work and camis or whatever you want to call them is 9 o'clock. I know before lunch we're having another formation, right? Like that structure. And then you get out and it really is like taking the goggles off and you can see all of this shit around you with no direction, no guidance, no purpose. Like you're just completely lost. So what were you seeing when those goggles came off? Like, was it overwhelm? Was it confusion? Imagine probably a lot of both. Like, kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was overwhelming, more just like a rut. It was just, this is my life now. This is the path I'm going. Is that actually the path that I want to do? If not, then what's the next step? And for me, it was more of just realizing like, I'm not happy where I'm at in life. Like, this isn't it. Like, I want more. And how can I actually get more? And it's a pain. Like, it was just a pain of individual growth that you need but don't know how to get. And from there, it's just like, all right, well, I want to get there. How do I get there? And then doing all the steps and starting to get the education, starting to get the background, the experience to get there. And for me, I would actually say jumping into the nonprofit was the best thing that I could have done after getting out of the military, because
Okay, and I want to
it
talk
was the
about that in a
one.
second, but I have a really good question that I haven't thought to ask. I've had a couple of other guard and reservists on here. Most of them are actually still a part of the guard of the reserves, but you are not. And so I want to understand when I got out of the army, it was called ACAP at the time, Army Career Assistance Program. Now I think it's called TAPS. Is there some kind of like transition thing that they put you guys through or program? Or is it really kind of like what you were describing? Like you got 3 units who don't give a shit about you. Basically, you're just getting out, figure it out. Because even ACAP for us was uh, basically a bunch of classes. I did them all online. I don't know why. Usually you had to go in person. The only one I showed up for in person was the resume writing class, which wasn't even that great. And they were basically like, shake your hand with this shitty copy of a resume and say, use your GI Bill, go to college, get a degree, and hopefully you'll get a good career by. Is that similar to what the reserves is like, or is there just no process whatsoever? Figure it out.
Yeah, for me, there was no process. Literally, I went through, they were like, your contract's over, bye. And that was it. I didn't have anything else, no classes, no taps, nothing. Like, there was absolutely nothing for me. They were basically just like, thanks for 8 years.
Wow.
You can go now.
And I wonder sometimes about that because you guys are working civilian careers, right? To support yourselves. And I don't know, it's to me the reserves and the guards almost like your military as like a hobby kind of deal. I
Yeah.
know that's like I don't want
No,
to
I
say
get it.
that as disrespectful, but it just kind of is, right? And so I think they might just expect that you already kind of have it figured out because you're working a job in the civilian sector already. So you have some ability to know how to communicate in the civilian workforce or whatever. And, even in your case, I think I have a buddy who is pretty high up in UPS. He started as a box thrower, and now he's like almost a facility manager of Memphis, Tennessee, and he loves it. He says UPS is a phenomenal company to work for. I personally, a couple of years ago, I was a seasonal driver for them. They paid me a lot of money to meet with my UPS driver and deliver packages for several weeks. Like, I mean, really good money to do that. And the driver that I was assigned to, he was awesome. He loved his job. He absolutely loved his job. He had nothing but good things to say about UPS. So, did you have a similar experience at UPS, or you just knew that UPS wasn't what you wanted to be doing?
Yeah, UPS was comfortable for me. It was kind of one of those positions where you can't grow unless someone else leaves. So your cap is based off of who's there. So if you have people that have been there for 10 plus years and they're comfortable and they're not moving, you can't grow within the organization. And for me, I always like looking forward. Like what is at the end of the day, what is the goal? And for me, it's always to be towards the top. Not necessarily be at the top, but at least make the direction upwards. And I don't like positions or companies that you have to cap really, really hard, like that, where like you just outright cannot get a promotion unless someone else leaves. And so then you have one person who leaves, which means there's one spot to fill, and you have 15 people that have all been waiting for that one spot for the past 7 years. It just makes it very hard to be motivated to do well in the position. So I definitely don't think that UPS is a bad place to work. It's just for my individual goals, it wasn't what I was looking for.
Well, and to me, that's not surprising because in the military, particularly, you know what you have to do to make the next rank, right? Like there's a certain requirement for, time and grade from the rank that you currently are to time and service to you have to check these blocks. I don't know how they promote in the Navy, but the Army, E5 and E6 you board, E7 is still a board, but it's a paper board in front of a bunch of sergeant majors. Like, and there are things that you can do to solidify that you get picked up for those ranks. And so, when it's just a waiting game, like that's not fun. I mean, you see it in the Army, particularly with like Ranger Battalion, right? There's only a certain number of slots for platoon sergeants and squad leaders over there. And if you don't want to sit around at the same rank for a long time, you will have to leave that battalion and leave your dream behind to go and progress further in your military career. And I can absolutely relate to that. So how are you coping with all these choices and the not feeling fulfilled at your job? Like what are you, because you're in the MBA program, which you had started while you were on your last deployment. So how long is that program?
I was doing an expedited, so I finished my MBA within 1 year.
Okay, so did you finish that after you had gotten out of the reserves or before you had gotten out?
Yeah, so I had gotten out. No, I had finished it while still in the reserves after the third deployment.
Okay. Okay. So you have an MBA now, so your options are
Mhm.
actually kind of open for you as you're getting out. You just didn't know where you wanted to land yet, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, like I had options.
Yeah, yeah, you have an option. I mean, an MBA, that's an impressive achievement for especially for somebody, I was the exact same position as you. I just wanted out of small town Indiana. I knew college wasn't for me. I did my best to keep my grades up so I could play sports. And I think sports is why I kept my grades up. Fast forward, almost 13 years when I get medically retired and I'm back in college, I think college is a joke. It's actually I have a philosophy that college was actually designed for people with life experience because it really wasn't hard at all. I breezed through it, and I wasn't a good student in high school, so it's interesting to me. But you've got options, and so are you applying to just all these places that you think are going to align with your core beliefs and values, or like what was that process like for you?
Yeah, at the time, it was actually pretty interesting. I was working UPS about 30 hours there. I was also working a remote position as a senior admin. This is like during the start of COVID. Well, not the start. Actually, during the start of COVID, I was actually on deployment, so that was interesting. But I, yeah, But I was working as a senior admin in like 2021, around there. That was doing 40 hours. So I had about like 70 to 80-hour work weeks, and I was also finishing up my MBA and had the kiddo to take care of. Um, so that's actually what I was kind of doing towards the end of my military career, was just working nonstop to get fully ready for the next step. And that was going to be ideally something that I could just dive in, push my heart and soul into, and then ideally grow in. And that's what the nonprofit ended up being.
Yeah, and so you said during your MBA you took a class on human resources and you really enjoyed it. It helped you to realize that you'd be doing HR related functions throughout your entire life, and you mentioned that earlier in the conversation. So coupling that with your your entrepreneurial drive, because you said you've always known you wanted to be in medicine and be an entrepreneur, is that kind of how you started to see the world and kind of knew that was your path moving forward? Is that really when that all happened?
Yeah, absolutely. Like at the end of the day, there's basically seven things that an HR like department can do. And of those seven things, I was already doing like five of those things just in the military, being a small teams leader, being a leader at UPS, working for Maximus and some of these other organizations as a civilian. Like I realized like I've this is what I've been doing. I just didn't have a name for it, and I didn't understand everything that goes into it. So when I had made that connection, it was like turning on a light switch. I was like, this makes sense. Like I know why I like this so much. And it really helped me like kind of understand and put a label onto my mindset at the time. And it really helped me out.
Yeah, man, for sure. And so you land at the nonprofit, and let's talk about what you learned at the nonprofit that helped you found Omni HR and kind of really, I assume that's, making it to CEO of that nonprofit probably informed a lot of your current, life and building Omni HR and all of that. So I'm curious to hear the story of kind of how that progressed, how you end up being the CEO, and then why you step away from that to pursue your own thing.
Yeah. So when it came to the nonprofit, I originally just wanted to jump into human resources. This was basically like my first step into that position. So like a real title in HR, not just like the experience and understanding the stuff that I've done was HR adjacent, but actually doing HR. So that was the goal with the nonprofit, jumping in as an HR generalist, learning from who the HR director was. At the time, the HR director ended up stepping away, and the CEO at the time asked me if I wanted to step into the role. I said, of course, because I won't say no to an opportunity. So then it became, I have to learn absolutely everything that it comes to doing HR, being very self sufficient, understanding, the legislation, understanding all the documentation. How do we actually build an HR department and HR infrastructure? Like all these small things that for someone who's experienced may not be that hard. But for me, who was literally trying to learn more about it, to just be jumped into that position was a completely different ball game. And that's really what it was. So just jumping in, being ready for it, and then doing absolutely anything that was needed from me. And then from there, it ended up, growing. And instead of just being in charge of like the HR section, being in charge of all the HR and all the admin for the entire organization, becoming the chief human resource officer and chief of staff of the company, and basically setting up absolutely everything from the bylaws to the company to setting up the board of directors to creating the business from the start. Um, and that really helped me when it came to starting my own business. And another huge thing was I didn't realize that that was a form of networking at the time, of me just doing my best and people seeing that. I got so many opportunities from that one nonprofit that anyone who's trying to jump into a field, I always recommend nonprofits now. Because to me, I got a job offer from that one position. I have the chief information officer, the IT guy from there. He's now, him and his team are developing a software for my company. So like I got so much from that one position, and basically it just came down to accepting that this is a position that I may not have been ready for, but that I was going to make sure that I do my best and do absolutely everything that was required. And from there, it opened up a ton of doors.
Yeah, I love that, man, because networking is so important. I'm learning that lesson. That's how basically you're on this program right now, right? Like it's just through networking on LinkedIn, and 99.9% of the guests that are coming on this show are from just the network and just meeting people and putting content out, and people reaching out. And I have heard that nonprofits are phenomenal for doing that. And I think even more than that, like nonprofits really, it's just a different kind of entrepreneurship. You know what I mean? Like you were thrust into this position and like, again, diving in head first, like having to learn all this stuff on the fly, feet to the fire in that uncomfortable kind of role. And I think it's so important to kind of stress that because that's what entrepreneurship is, right? Like it's just being uncomfortable and not knowing a lot all the time. Would you agree to that?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's basically just flying through the seat of your pants and hoping that you can make it happen, right? But not just hoping, but like doing all the steps that you know that needs to get done.
Yeah, and would you say that in that nonprofit, did you have a solid core group of people that were willing to be patient with you and help you and teach you the things that you didn't know? Like, did you have a good support system there?
Not really. Like there were a few people that were very, very adept in their specific fields. But as far as like HR and the back end admin stuff, it was basically all on me. So it was really just a trial by fire.
And so, yeah, and that's good, man, because when I talk to veterans, I find out that and I think you might agree with this, entrepreneurship's not really been presented to them ever as an option for life after the service. Do you find that's probably true as well?
Oh yeah, 100%. Everything is, oh, find a job, go to college, use your GI Bill, get the VA home loan. Like that's it. Like get a job, get a house, that's it. Like that is what is pushed.
Yeah, and so through the work that I'm doing and this show and just trying to build a coaching program and a community and all of that stuff because I see a need when I do get in front of veterans. I find the most common question is like, but I don't know where to start. And like you didn't know where to start either, and you just admitted there were a few people who were really good at their jobs that did give you some help, but also it was largely on you. So talk about that experience for you, and like what was your approach to going and finding the answers to the things that were hard for you and were challenging and you just didn't know?
Yeah. I would say it really came down to identifying what the main issue was and then finding out, doing your research and your due diligence on how to fix that one problem and kind of doing that one thing at a time. So, what's the first problem that you see? All right, well, how do you fix that problem? Don't worry about everything at once. It's really, really important, at least for me, it was really important to identify one thing at a time, fix that, and then move on. Because one of the really big problems that I see and that I used to have was that I would identify problems as a giant mass and then I try to fix all of them at once and I just wouldn't get anywhere, right? Or like I wouldn't even know where to start. But the real thing was identifying what the first step was and then how do you get to that? And that was it. You just do that enough times and then you don't have a problem anymore. You fixed it.
Yeah, I agree with that, man. That's super important. How do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. And that's how you have to approach pretty much everything in life. I had a platoon sergeant one time, smartest guy I think I've ever met, Jim Gilliland. I don't know if you're listening to this, but I've held on to this for a long time. He always says you got all this shit floating around in your head, and you just like pick one of those things and you fix it before you worry about the other things. And I've tried to live my life like that since he said that to me, and it really does work. It just like it puts things into perspective for you, right? Like knowing that you can't take all these things, problems, issues floating around in your head and work on them effectively all at once. You take the biggest one or the most pressing one and you just kind of work your way down. And so I love your answer there, man, because I feel like if we live our lives that way, basically you can't fail and you can be the best version of yourself that you can be.
Yeah, 100%.
you know so how, how did Omni HR, when did you decide that it was time for you to step out and build your own thing? And I imagine, for me, I managed a gun store, was making a guy a lot of money, realized I was pretty good at running business. I was like, I could do this for myself. And that kind of set me on my path trying a whole lot of different things before I landed on, this and a community and a coaching program and, a bunch of other stuff coming down the pipe in the future, as I do more of these conversations and talk to more veterans, and find out what needs are and how to build things. Like, so was that what it was for you? You like realized like I had just built all of this for somebody else, for not myself, and I want to do this for myself.
I actually didn't even make that realization at the time. It took me a while. So I jumped into the nonprofit, done that for a while. And then after that, it kind of jumped into the HR focus. And from there, one of the opportunities that I got was working at a casino actually out of the state. So I ended up moving my family up there for another opportunity. Um, as a higher level leader of a for-profit business in HR. So it was a cool opportunity, very excited about it. My family all agreed and we're all excited as well. So we moved up there. And when we ended up doing that, I ended up getting let go from that organization because of Omni HR. And I was enjoying the HR side. I was really, really digging it. I was also still working at the nonprofit, and I was like, I want to start my own company. Like I've always wanted to entrepreneur life. I was actually YouTube videos is what first got me into thinking like this is what I should do. It was at the time YouTube videos on direct to hire recruiting. So I was watching some random videos just popped up on my feed, and I was like, let's check it out. And I was like, that is awesome. Like it takes my skill set that I currently have because I was doing a lot of recruiting. And it makes like it's everything. It's everything that I want. It has the HR side, it has the entrepreneurship side. Let's make it happen. So I think it took like a month from the idea to the actual like starting the LLC and doing all those steps. And I had done it. I had created my organization, and then the casino that I was working at was not happy that I'd started an HR company, and they ended up firing me because of it. Which I don't blame them, by the way. Like I do understand conflict of interest. I definitely get it. I, in my opinion, I was overconfident. I thought that I was so good at my job that they wouldn't fire me. They would maybe sign like a non-compete or something like that. But they had different different ideas. So we actually just found out that we had baby number two on the way. So baby number two, it was right before the holiday season. They ended up firing me, and this was about 2 weeks after I started the company. So obviously, no clients, no profit, nothing. Um, so yeah, that's how I started my entrepreneurship life.
That's that's awesome, man. And I don't really agree with them firing you. It's not like your company's a threat to them at this point, right? Like I understanding, looking forward, yeah, the company can be a threat to them, but I'm just of the philosophy that there's more than enough to go around for all of us, and you don't have to do business that way. I think that's a shitty way of doing business, quite frankly. Like, little old Manuel, who just got his LLC, is not a threat to this giant corporation casino, in fact, right? That is, I mean, we could talk about that business model for at length, and it's just not a good business. You're preying on weak people, right? Like you're just like not a great, I don't know. Anyway, so let's talk about that then, because being fired right before the holidays with baby number two on the way, you know, that has to come with some kind of internal struggles, limiting beliefs, things that just aren't really good mentally going on there, right?
Yeah, no, it was definitely a big hurdle to overcome. We had left our like safety net because none of our family was up here. We were all completely by ourselves. No one lives up in Illinois, which is where we moved. So we went from Florida to Illinois just for this job that I was fired from. You know what I mean?
In
Like,
2 weeks, nonetheless, right? Like 2 weeks is not a long time. You just moved a long way.
yeah. Well, I was working there for a year. The 2 weeks what I had started my company
Oh, so it
And then
only
2
so you
weeks.
made it a year. Got it. I got it.
Yeah,
I see
yeah,
what
so
you're
I was
saying.
there for a
Yeah.
year, and that's why I was like, I'm doing good, all the work is getting done. I'm their top HR person. And then from there, it turned into, well, I'm now, not don't have like a paying job anymore with the kids and, the wife, and us not like being away from home. We don't have anyone to help us. My wife's family, my family, no one is there to support us. So we're fully on our own. And then trying to figure out how to make that work. So from there, I actually got a job at Domino's because I was applying to a lot of other positions, but the interviews and everything, it would be like 5 interviews to get told no, or, what I'm saying? Because they were all like higher level positions. And I get that it takes a while. I do understand it, but I had bills I had to pay immediately, so got
So
a job at
delivering pizzas it
Domino's.
is.
Yep, yep. I, got hired on as assistant manager, and I became the general manager of that store after, like, a month. So I just took over the store when I got there. So, yeah, the previous GM was not very happy about that, but, it happens. And, yeah, I guess, but, took over that, and then from there, I like to joke about it. I was the CEO of 2 different companies and a general manager of a Domino's. Like, what a joke of a guy, you know?
That's awesome, man. I think that's well, it shows your persistence, right? Like, first of all, you've got enough going on that a lot of people would have just quit, right? Like, I think a lot of people when when the company, the casino was going to fire them for opening the LLC, it's like, well, I'll just go dissolve this right now so I can hold on to the job. We can fix this. Like, nothing like this will ever happen again because, to your point, those higher level jobs, it takes months to get hired, right? Like, it's not immediate. You're right. Like 4 or 5 interviews spread over 10 or 12 weeks, like that's 90 days just to get into a new job. And then you start that job and you're probably not getting a paycheck for another couple of weeks, right? Like, it's, you know, you've got all these things working against you and you are just persistent enough. Like, I'm not too good to go deliver pizzas so I can focus on my thing and take care of my family at the same time. And I think that's a solid message, and the one that we're trying to deliver to the audience here is that, you know, my situation is different from your situation is different from, Joe Schmo who's going to be trying to become an entrepreneur, right? Like, I have enough coming in right now that I get to focus on this full time. I'm an outlier in that situation. I understand most people coming out of the military have a family, and it's okay to go work that job to gain some knowledge, particularly if you're in a field that you want to start a business in. Go work a job in that field so you can learn all these nuanced things and take that with you into starting your business. But don't come home and blow off your business. Like, actually work on that as well. Is that similar to what you were doing while you're working at Domino's?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when it came to Domino's, it was really just, I need money, and I don't wanna give up on this thing that I built. Um, and that's just really all that it was. It was like, I have something that I need to do. I don't wanna give up on what I started. And I actually, one of the reasons why I stayed at Domino's for a year, and one of the reasons was I don't want this to happen again. I'm not giving up on Omni HR. I'm gonna make it happen. So if I'm gonna do that, that means I can't have another HR job. So I can't work in the thing that I'm passionate about, which means I have to make this work. And that kind of understanding and that drive is what made me to be able to now, Omni HR is all I do. Like, I don't have another job. I actually left the nonprofit because I wanted to commit full time to Omni HR. I couldn't separate my focus and get to the level that I wanted to get to. So, taking the hit realistically of, it is a little embarrassing at that stage being the CEO of 2 different companies and being, a Domino's employee, which there's nothing wrong with Domino's employee, but it's not what I wanted to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have an MBA, I was pre-med, 8 years in the military just to be, in charge of a Domino's store. It's not exactly, what people would expect, but that's what I had to do to not give up on the dream.
Yeah, sometimes you got to eat a little shit, right? Like, it just is what it is. I get it. What was your goal for Omni HR when you started it? Like when you first went and pulled, and petitioned your state to get the LLC or whatever, what was your vision for Omni HR?
So, the first vision was I wanted to be the sole proprietor. I wanted to be kind of a smaller organization that focuses on recruiting for IT, high level IT positions. So basically, I would reach out to organizations and I would find out if they needed to hire for any high level IT roles. And that would include like a top software engineer or a VP of, IT or whatever it is, but that was the focus. And then after about 6 months and a few clients, I realized I wanted more. Like this isn't all that I think that Omni HR can be. And then I actually rebranded the organization to now we help small to medium-sized businesses scale by giving them everything that a fully functional HR department would have. So you look at like all these Amazons, Googles, like all these really, really big companies, they invest millions of dollars into their HR departments because that's what you need. You need your culture to be there because you want people to work there. You need the
So I
right
think I think we
policies and
should take a step
procedures.
back. Like let's talk about what HR encompasses inside of these big companies, because I'm trying to understand this too. And like I really like what you're doing and like talking about like catering to small and medium sized businesses who don't have the budget that Google's and Amazons have. But how, like, so talk about all the things involved in that and how they actually help a company scale and grow. Because I'm curious about that as well. I know the audience will be.
Yeah, for sure. So there's 7 core functions that an HR department can do. And by that, even if the HR department may not do it themselves, the company has to do it to succeed. So you've got your recruiting, obviously selecting the right people for the role. You could have someone that is perfect for the role, but if they don't have the mental drive or the want to do it, they're going to fail regardless. So recruiting is the first step of building the company. And then you've got training and development. So making sure that the people that you do hire, the people that you have on staff, they are at the best that they can be. They learn everything. They have a solid onboarding structure. So when they're hired on, they're actually able to grow and they are comfortable in the organization. Because if you're not comfortable, if you're not confident in your position, you're not going to work at the highest level. You've got your employee relations. So making sure the team is actually happy to be there, making sure that they have that open communication with their leadership, any concerns are met. And that's really big when it comes to culture, because if you don't have those kind of that open communication there, you have a leader that doesn't know what their team is thinking. And if you have that disconnect is going to destroy the company. You have performance management, so making sure that there is continued open communication in a structured format where you can provide teams with the ways to succeed, right? So you have goals. How can you improve an organization? By increasing the quota, by pushing them harder, but it can't just be a push, right? There has to be a push and pull. And that's kind of what we try to facilitate. You've got your payroll and benefits, right? So making sure that the compensation is there, making sure that everything when it comes to the payment and all of the direct deposit, if you mess with someone's money, they don't trust you, right? And if they don't trust you, they're not going to work for you. So the benefits side, the payroll side, yeah. So all of that combines in to what an HR team needs to succeed and what realistically any business needs. So we offer those 7 functions and we try to help people because if you have unlimited recruiting, if you have unlimited, you know, of onboarding and training, then the only limiting factor is how much money are you able to make? Like, what is the service? Because if you can scale unlimited, then the only limiting factor is are your clients. But if you know what I'm saying, so there's no cap, there's no limit, and that's what makes these other organizations so big. But we can do that from the beginning with this structure.
And so how did you identify this as the main problem you were going to solve? Because right, like to have a business, you have to be solving a problem in a niche that people need. And I think oftentimes, even until you just gave me a great education, which I'm grateful for, right? Like HR to me, it was payroll and benefits and like, I don't know, sharp training, right? Like sexual harassment and a sexual assault prevention training, right? Like I really think that that's kind of the common thought people have when they think HR, right? And so obviously all of your studying and your training, your MBA, right? Like that definitely helped you identify this problem. But like, what was it to you that like I can do this for small and medium sized businesses? It doesn't just have to be this multi-million dollar or multi-billion dollar corporation.
Yeah, it was really that's actually one of the big things that I got from Combat Connect as well, because I already did it, right? Like I built the HR department from 0 to 100%. I put all of these, safety measures in place so that way they were compliant, they were safe, they knew how to grow. And with that, as well as working in an HR department internally, I saw the problems firsthand. You guys don't have a good onboarding system. Your team doesn't talk to you. Like, you don't know what the problems are in your own company. Things like that, I identified it from both ends, and that's what gave me the realization that this is a huge problem that everyone deals with. I've had the luxury to see it from both ends. From one side, as an entrepreneur that's has absolutely nothing and I have to build everything myself, so I know the pain of having to do that, as well as internally of an HR department of, you know, kind of the bigger realm of I have 500 team members that I have to deal with. If you don't have these structures in place, it's never going to work. You're never going to be able to function at the highest level if you don't have those 7 functions on lock. So I kind of got a very unique view at both sides.
That's awesome, man. What makes a good onboarding process for a company?
That's a good one. So when it comes to onboarding, first off is understanding onboarding and orientation. Onboarding should start before they even step on board. Like before they even get to the premises, you should start sending them their paperwork. So, templated packet right from the very beginning of, hey, welcome aboard email. And that's kind of your first, like their first view internal to you, right? So your culture building starts right there. So, what kind of company do you want to show? This kind of comes down to the brand, the culture that you're trying to build. So, having that right from the drop, super, super important. So sending them a template, this is all the documentation you need. These are our policies and procedures. Please read over them. You have to sign the documentation in the back. All of this comes into, hey, this is what the company is. This is what you have to be if you want to succeed here. From there, it comes into, day one. So your orientation is basically just getting them comfortable and having them understand before they go out and actually start working. So typically 1 to 2 days when it comes to the orientation, you got to go over all the compliance training. So, all the same training that we got in the military, all the same stuff, all that has to go through it. So diversity, equity, inclusion, your sexual harassment, all that has to go through. After you go through all that, then you want them to be ready before they step out there. So is there any unique training that they need to know before they start working? Give them a preliminary view of it, right? Like maybe they won't be able to fully understand until they start working on it, but at least give them a chance to succeed. Give them the opportunity to understand what they need to do. And then from there, follow up with them, provide them a mentor, make sure that they're able to communicate with their leader, and then have a 30, 60, 90-day small survey, little interview where you can talk to them and make sure they're comfortable. And at the end of the 90 days, they should be one of your best employees. And if they're not, then the onboarding didn't succeed. And that's something that we can kind of view. And that's how you get the highest level team, is you show them from the drop that this isn't a joke. This is a real spot, and we want to be the best.
I love that answer, man, because I'm just learning about onboarding, particularly as I'm trying to build a community. And I guess this is the first time I've really talked about it on this show. Is I do have in the works a community that's going to launch at some point, and my partners and the people that are helping me build this are very adamant about onboarding. And hearing you talk about all of these things, particularly especially right now, it it makes me reflect on all the jobs that I tried to do when I got out, and I didn't have any solid at all, right? Particularly, I went into a lot of sales roles, and that's such a different monster, right? Like sales positions are they're a dime a dozen and people don't last in them, right? Cold calling sucks. A lot of people don't have thick skin, so they can't handle it. But there was never any of that. And I think for me, hearing you talk about, those 7 fundamental things that go into an HR department, it's really the onboarding process and the training and development that I think are lacking in a lot of companies. Am I off the mark on that, or is that what you find as well?
No, yeah, absolutely. We actually just had a huge issue. One of the clients we're working with, we are not working with them on their compliance. I like to do a risk assessment. So right from the very beginning, I told them like, hey, these are things that like you really, really need, not because I want to fix it for you, but just because like you need to fix these things. And they ended up not fixing it, thinking that it wasn't a very big problem. And they actually lost $30,000 in the span of 3 months, like actual like capital, because of a mistake that one of their team did because they didn't have a solid onboarding structure. So people really, really doubt, having that training and development, having like that solid structure. But at the end of the day, if you don't have paperwork, and if people have to talk to you every time, or whoever the leader is, then if you don't give them 100% of the information they need to succeed, they're not going to succeed. Not at the level you want them to. So
And I
100%.
can
Yeah.
absolutely relate to that because I went out as my first ever 1099 was in life insurance, and it was with a newer company. And I have nothing bad to say about the people that I met there, or but it left such a bad taste in my mouth because he didn't have things in place like that. There wasn't solid training, so things that I needed to know about and understand, right? Like he talked a lot about how you get paid, but he didn't talk a whole lot about what a chargeback is and what that means for you. So I've said it here before. Essentially, I'm getting advanced 9 months, and for the way I saw it is because nobody taught me about chargebacks. I'm thinking I can't touch any of this money that I'm making for 9 months, essentially, because at some point I'm going to have to pay this back because people aren't going to pay their premiums, right? And that could have been avoided by having proper training and development, right? SOPs in place so that I knew what was expected. Another big piece is the way you avoid chargebacks is through follow up. So you're supposed to massage your book of business. Nobody taught me that, right? Like I was just expected to go out there and sell as much as I could. And nobody was giving me the support on the back end of like, how do you manage this? And I imagine that's probably what you're finding with a lot of companies that you work with, huh?
Yeah, no, a ton. And at the end of the day, it's just stuff that either people don't think about, they don't know how to do, or they don't want to do. Which, it's not a problem necessarily, but like it has to be done. Like at least if you want to succeed, it has to be done. And yeah, that's one of the really, really big issues that a lot of people are dealing with, is just they either don't know how or they just don't want to. But you're not going to do it, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Do you find that having your MBA actually helps you in this space? Um, or have you learned a lot? Like me, I don't have an MBA. I have really a choose your own adventure degree from the Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington. I know it sounds funny. I think it was a lot harder of a degree to get than a traditional degree because you have to evaluate yourself. Your professor evaluates you, and then you do a joint evaluation to essentially get your credits. So there's no way to avoid doing the work, and there's no way to cheat the work because it's very, I don't know, unconventional. And it was a lot of fun. But basically, I chose business slash psychology, but I don't have anywhere near the business knowledge that you do from an MBA. So, do you find that your MBA helps you? Because I've talked to people here who have MBAs and they say they've learned more from LinkedIn about the practical applications of business than they ever would have gotten from an MBA program.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with what they're saying. When it comes to the MBA, anyone that tells me that they're interested in MBA, I tell them that it will only help them when it comes to advancing in something they're already doing. So for example, like if you're working in a specific field and you want to get to the next stage, then yes, an MBA will help you because it'll make you more competitive with the experience you already have, but it won't give you anything and it won't open any doors that wouldn't already be cracked open. Like it's not something magical that's really going to push you if you took the MBA seriously, you really read through it, like you really actually learned every class. I didn't, but if you actually did that, yeah, a lot of great knowledge, a lot of great knowledge. But at the end of the day, people are in it for the grade. Like they're in it for the grade, they're in it to get the degree. It's not necessarily the knowledge at the time that they're focused on. It's, I just want to finish this, I want to graduate, and that's what the focus is. So it really just depends on what you want out of it. For me, it was, I want to pass all my stuff. I'll write all my papers. I'll do whatever. But that was it. It was very surface level. Like I care about the grade. I care about the degree. The information to me at the time wasn't something that I was super interested in. So I didn't get a lot out of it. If you are really interested in the information, then yeah, absolutely. But it's an internal thing. It's not like you're not going to go there and be like, well, I hope that I learn a bunch of stuff and then not read anything. Then it's your fault at the end of the day. Like you chose not to read the information.
Yeah. So in other words, you could have done what you've done with Omni HR without having the MBA.
Yes, I could have done what I'm doing now without the MBA. The MBA helped me because it opened my eyes, though. So I definitely have to give credit to it because I wouldn't have understood everything that HR was if I didn't go to the school.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's pros and cons, right? Like having the MBA is obviously going to reward you in the future, right? It's not all for naught, but oftentimes I think people really, it perpetuates imposter syndrome, right? Well, people don't want to use me as a coach because what can I know about business? I don't have an MBA. It's like, well, motherfucker, I've got an email list and I'm building a community and I have a podcast, right? Like this is the digital age, right? These are businesses. And I don't know, the highest ROI in the digital space right now is from an email list. For every dollar you invest, depending on where you read, you make between $37 and $48 in ROI, right? Like where else in business are you making those kind of returns? You know what I'm saying? So I do know some stuff because I'm out here networking with people who are further ahead than I am in their journey, having conversations with people like you know what I mean? And these are fun for me because they're like a little free masterclass, right? Like a lot of people I get to talk to on here charge lots of money for their coaching programs or whatever, and I get to spend a couple of hours picking their brains about their business and their knowledge, and like then I get to take that, put it in my tool belt. Maybe I don't need it right now where I'm at in my business, but at least I'll have it for the future. And so I'm glad that you also you can echo what some other people with an MBA say about you can absolutely learn everything you need to learn from talking to people. YouTube, even you started on YouTube, right? Like I've learned a lot on YouTube. Avoid the gurus. I'm here to tell you, I've spent thousands of dollars, right? Part of my mission is to eliminate the gurus because this is a process. I 2 to 5 years I think before you really make the kind of money you want to be making. You could do it faster. I feel like those are outlier cases. You get lucky, whatever. But is that stuff you agree with as well?
Yeah, definitely. There's no substitution for doing it. I 100% agree with that. Like you can learn as much as you want, but reading a book isn't going to give you the same knowledge as actually going out and doing it. So, theory is awesome, but the practical application to it, that's where you get the real big return.
What are some of the challenges you're facing with building Omni HR? What are the things that keep you awake at night with it that have really been a struggle for you to kind of overcome and build your company?
For me, it's sales because I've never been a salesperson. I've never really had that mindset or that drive. I also am not a huge fan of talking to people. So off the drop, I'm
I
not
feel
great.
good now because you're here talking to
Yeah,
me. That's great.
no,
I
no, for
appreciate
sure. Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. I'm not. I've never really been big on like talking to a bunch of people or like having communication with people I don't know. So that's really, really for me is like stepping out of my comfort zone. And when it comes to sales, that's definitely my biggest issue. Because it just comes down to, I have a team. I have everything that I need to succeed. It just comes down to leading them the right way and making sure that they are managed properly and that they're able to be as successful as they can be. Like I'm not good at something, I've identified that. The solution is finding someone else to do it instead, right?
Yeah, for sure. Because you're either investing your time or your money in it, right? And if you know you're not good at it, it's probably better to invest some money in that to buy back that time to do the things that you're good at, right? And I'm not surprised to hear you say sales. Sales is that's it's a certain caliber individual that that's good at it. It's not for everybody, and I'm sure you know you probably have some superstars that are selling for you now, because you recognize that that's a weak area for you, and you can do it better. And I think that's awesome. And I want you to speak about kind of. I have a philosophy when I hire people or I bring people onto my team. I'm hiring them or bringing them on to do a job I know I can't do as well as them. So my philosophy is I'm hiring you to tell me how to do your job. As an HR guy, do you think that that's a solid approach?
Yeah, that's actually a great way to do it, you know? Talking to someone, and when it comes to recruiting, that's huge, right? Because you're not always gonna know what exactly you are necessarily, like, recruiting for. Like, you don't know the nitty-gritty when it comes to who you're hiring. But talking to 10 people and picking each of their brains, that gives you a much better idea of this person knows what they're talking about. That person, the details that they have, the metrics that they're able to identify, the way that they're able to explain on how they would build the team or do the role, 100%. You know, I don't know what it is 100%, like the job itself on how to do it, because if I did, I would just do it myself, you know? But the thing is hiring someone that can do it better, making sure that they have all the tools they need. Absolutely. That's a great way to hire.
I just for me, it's very much like I know enough about this area that I want to hire for to be dangerous, but I don't know enough for it to benefit me, right? So I see that need and I'm also not interested in it, right? Like it doesn't move the needle for me. That's how I determine when it's time to hire somebody. And so when I do want to bring people into my team, it's very much a conversation like this. It's like, "Hey, I really believe in the philosophy let creators create." Because why put those, and I've approached that at my life with my tattoos, right? Like, hey, I like dragons and war, I want a sleeve, do your thing, right? And I end up with these awesome art pieces, right? Like my latest one is on I actually next week have to go do more, but it's to commemorate my ayahuasca journey, right? And I just went to the guy and I was like, look, dude, like I know this is going to cost me a lot of money. I don't really know what I want, but I want something to commemorate this experience. And I'm going to let you do what you want to do. And every tattoo I've gotten that way comes out so much better because there's no constraint on these people to do what they're good at. And I don't know. I think it's such a powerful philosophy. I think that way you don't have to worry so much about the employee relations because you're setting the tone from the beginning. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. That's actually really big when it comes to culture too for the company. So like what you're doing is you're developing a culture within your organization that allows people to function at their highest level. You know, giving someone the tools to succeed and then telling them like this is on you to succeed, that gives them an that gives them their own like equity in the company, right? Because if I succeed or fail, it's on me. You're not holding me to anything. I don't have to follow your necessarily like your SOPs to succeed. And then if they fail, well, it's not my fault. It's yours because you wrote them. It's 100% on me. So whether or not I succeed or fail, you're giving them that opportunity. So I think that's actually really big when it comes to developing a positive culture. And that's one of the really big things when it comes to HR is having that structure. And then you kind of got to balance as you grow and as you scale, you have to balance the idea of giving people their own kind of nuances, their own ability to be creative and be themselves while also creating a structure that you know that you're compliant, that you know that you're covered and things like that. So that's a balance, and that's actually one of the really big concerns when it comes to businesses.
Yeah, so for somebody like me who is hiring like that, like talk me through some like pitfalls or some things to watch out for as I grow and develop, you know what I mean, that I may not know about, right? Because I just feel like as a decent human, I want to be a good boss. I want to be a cool boss, right? Like I don't want I had enough toxic leadership in the army, to really build my leadership style around things I knew I didn't want to be. And then I had enough good leaders to kind of emulate the good things, right? And I think that's what true leadership is seeing what's around you, identifying those things that are good about good leaders and those things that are bad about bad leaders, and even the bad things about good leaders, and just adopting all of those to your leadership style. And so I don't know what I don't know yet because I'm not there, right? So like what are some pitfalls that I could run into and how can I stay ahead of those?
Gotcha. Great question. I mean, off the drop, I'll say policies and procedures is really, really big. Do you have like employee handbook right now for your team?
No, 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 not yet. We're in the process of setting all of that up. It's a very early kind of like, I'm not making any money right now. They're, working for free essentially because they believe in the vision and the dream. And I really am trying to be a genuine human. I think that there is enough to go around. I'm more than willing to part with a lot of profit to get the help I need right now, right? Because I know together I can get there faster, and more efficient and in a better, more positive way than I can if I just keep control of everything and don't give up anything. Basically I'd rather have 50% of something than 100% of nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So
Awesome.
I'm definitely in the process. Like I said, the onboarding for the community is one thing, and then as we grow and more people come in, and I identify more areas where I need more team members. Obviously, I'm going to have to create SOPs and handbooks, and make sure that everybody understands the core values of the company and what it is that we stand for and what we're trying to do. But I'm just very early, man. And like getting to have these conversations is really good, and why I kind of started this show, because I thought if we can get this in front of veterans, A, they don't know entrepreneurship is an option, but B, we can provide so much value and just different areas of entrepreneurship, right? Like I never thought I would have a conversation with a guy who runs an HR company, right? Like this is why it's awesome, man. And I really, that's just kind of the vision, is to put this out there and figure out what's going on and let it inform the direction that I go, really.
Awesome. Yeah. Dude, I love it. So off the drop, I love it. So using your organization kind of as like a short case study to kind of flow through of the recommendations. First off, I always recommend compliance. So compliance is huge because if you're not secure, like then nothing matters. You guys can be as awesome as you want, but at the end of the day, if you're not legally compliant with your specific employee regulations as far as your local and your state and the federal legislation, then at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily matter, right? So covering yourself that way, really, really big. So making sure that you have someone either on your staff that understands it or using a third party to help you understand it and put everything in place, really big. One of the first things I'd recommend. The second one would then be let's see, for your specific organization, it would probably be the efficiency of it and the operational standpoint of it. So from that, it would be putting your procedures and your policies in place, because that also kind of ties into the compliance side and also holds the people accountable. Anyone that you bring in, that they can be free and they can do what they want, but they have at least a certain amount of guidelines that they know they can't cross the line, right? Because if you give people too much freedom, you give them that rope that they'll hang themselves with, right? But when it
Yeah, I'm
comes
giving you a
down,
box. You're going to play in
yeah,
it, right? Like you're not playing
exactly.
outside the box, but yeah, and the box will be big enough for you to do what you need to do, but I'm still giving you this box because at the end of the day, this my name on it.
Yep, 100%. And that's really, really big. And that goes into security of the company itself. That's kind of how I focus all of my conversations with any of our clients is, in my opinion, safety should come first, right? So making sure that you are compliant should be the very first thing. And then from there, it comes into the operational efficiency. So the recruiting, choosing the right people. You right now at this stage, you could do the recruiting if that's something that you're interested in, you're passionate about. Eventually you may want to pass it off to someone else, right? And then it comes down to the training and development. So making sure that the people that you bring on, how effective are they? Do they know everything they need to know? Are they actually functioning at the highest level they can? And that kind of leads right into the performance management. So realistically, if you just use all 7 functions and you go in order, starting with compliance, then efficiency, and then culture, Those are the big 3 things. Like, I like to talk about it kinda like as a dream outcome. I can tell you about the vacation and, like, the flight and how to get there, but the dream is scaling, growing unlimited. So, safety first, making sure that you're safe, your team is all safe, they're within their bounds, and then it comes into making sure that they can function as much as they can. Any holes are filled in, recruiting, as well as the training, as well as the performance management, and then from there, it's culture. Are they happy being part of your team? Do they actually do they feel like they can talk to their leaders? Do they feel like they can talk to you and that you actually hear what they're saying? Those are the big 3 things that help a small business become a medium and a large business.
That's awesome, man. Thank you so much for the tips. I do appreciate it. And kind of how I was already thinking anyway, right? Because, like I said, my experiences with toxic leadership and seeing how not to do things obviously influence how I want to do things. And, again, I don't know what I don't know. And I think that's what's part of the fun of this whole journey, right? Is like when you don't know something in business, naturally you're going to go gravitate towards people to seek out the answers, right? Like just people who have that knowledge. And then through conversation like this, you get to learn what you need to be doing. And I think it's awesome. I do have a follow-up question with that though. What would you say? So what's the difference between having 1099 employees versus having W2 employees? And do you need all the same things with the 1099 that you do with the W2 in as far as HR is concerned?
Gotcha. Um, well, the biggest difference is just the classification. So W-2, you just think of like your internal, your 9 to 5 person or the person that just works with you on staff. So basically they're guaranteed that position is like one of the big things is that people consider it as like a safety thing, as opposed to the I-9 is or the 1099 is a contract. So that one is they don't work for you internally to your company. They're helping you with the specific tasks. So another really big way to view that is if you want someone to do one specific thing, that's all you need them for, and that's all they're going to be required to do. 1099, because then they work until the task is done, and then basically you can re up the contract or do a new one, but that's basically it. As opposed to a W 2, that is someone who is internal to you, right? You hire them for a role, not a position, or not a you hire them for the role, not necessarily the task that needs to be done. So that's how I like to explaining the difference because it kind of changes the way that you look at it. Um, and that's really it. When it comes down to what is expected of them and what you have to offer them, a W-2, everything that you would have to offer, the health, the dental, the benefits, that is all certainly a part of it. As opposed to the 1099, you don't need to do that. They're responsible for paying their own taxes. They're responsible for doing all pretty much being completely independent, just like they are an independent contractor. As opposed to a W 2, that's someone internal to you. You have more responsibility to them.
Yeah, I'm leaning the 1099 route personally. I just think it works better for me. Plus, I know that I can still create that environment where they'll just want to contract with me, you know what I mean? Or they'll go tell their buddies like, "Hey, I don't want to do this contract anymore. This guy sent me enough referrals. I've got my own business, but he needs somebody solid to do this. You might want to work here." And I thank you for clarifying that because oftentimes I didn't even think of it like that. I was really just kind of thinking of it from like a tax purpose standpoint and of being able to get out of it standpoint if I decided I didn't need this employee anymore or whatever, versus it's probably a little bit harder to fire a W-2 guy and get them out of there. So looking at it as you're hiring 1090, you're 1099ing someone to do a specific task for a specific length of time versus a W-2 role, they belong to you, so technically you can make them do anything you want even outside of that role, versus a contractor, they're probably going to tell you to go fuck yourself, right? Like, you hired me to do this role, I'm not doing these 10 other things that you want me to do.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, pretty much. Obviously, like everything's within reason, but yeah, that's how I like explaining it. I think it gives it a better picture when trying to understand the differences. The only difference is, Yeah, when it comes to like the federal requirements, they do have different requirements. So, like for example, if you have a certain number of W-2s or under a certain amount of W-2s, you're not required to give insurance and things like that yet. So, it's a little bit more case by case because it's based off the individual states. And same for 1099s. They have very specific requirements. So, if you go outside of that requirement, then your company could be liable. So, just double check the state requirement for that position. But kind of comes back down to the compliance side. But yeah.
I was just getting ready to say that. Yeah, it's all about the compliance, which is why you said that's number one. And I think a lot of people aren't even considering compliance. I think they just don't know. You know what I mean? They're just like, I want to start a business, but man, compliance is. I watched it bring down an entire insurance agency. You know what I mean, for not being compliant. It's a big, big deal.
Yeah, people definitely underestimate how important it is. Yeah, you could go from doing super well and being very successful to literally shutting down your doors just because you didn't even know that something happened. So, yeah, compliance is huge.
How do you think your military experiences, how were you able to leverage those to build and help you grow your company?
the biggest the biggest takeaway that I got from my military experience is that it doesn't matter how you're feeling. Like I like to say this on my podcast with my wife that we have is that like your feelings don't matter because they really don't. Like you could be hungover, you could be, sick to your stomach. Like it doesn't matter. If you have to go on a ruck run, you're going on that ruck run. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter. Like if you have to wake up at 0400 because your team is moving out, it doesn't matter how you're feeling about the situation. You're going over there, like you could be sleepy, you could be tired, you could be upset, your girlfriend broke up with you. No one cares. You've got a job that you have to do, and then you make that happen. And I think that's probably the biggest takeaway that I got from the military that I still use to this day. Like when I wake up in the morning, if I don't feel like doing anything, that sucks. It doesn't matter. You have to do it anyways. And I have to tell myself that, and I go and I get dressed and I go through the steps and I take care of it. And I think that's the biggest.
For sure. You wrote your feelings don't matter. The things that need to be done no matter how you feel about it. Your actions matter much more than your thoughts. You can feel a type of way, but your outward actions are how you affect the world. And I think, man, that's a powerful statement right there because it's so true. What you put into the universe is what you get back. And I think if you just approach everything with massive action all the time, no matter how you feel, the only place you can end up is where you want to end up.
Yeah, absolutely. You set your goal and you just work until you get there. And there's no limit. Don't give yourself a deadline. Don't give yourself these things. It's just the steps that you have to do, you know.
Yeah, man. What are your long term goals for Omni HR and how do you envision its growth impacting the HR industry?
Let's see. Long-term goals. I want Omni HR to be the number one professional employer organization. So that's just a fancy way of saying HR services company. I want to be number one. I'm gonna be honest. I think that right now, a lot of the other organizations out there, they kind of split up the way that they do offer their HR services. So, for example, like they'll offer like just recruiting, or they'll do just compliance or just payroll. But we want to offer all functions. We want to do everything. We want to do it at the highest level. And ideally, I want to help as many small, medium-sized businesses grow as I can. You know, they with the power to scale unlimited, like anyone can grow, like you don't need millions of dollars to invest into your HR department, you know, as long as you have a plan, the way forward, we can help you get there. And I really want to help out as many people as I can.
So, would you say that's your unique value proposition is the fact that you're offering all seven of those areas versus, separating them into each individual category and just focusing on that? Is that what your basic leverage is in the industry?
Yeah, yeah, that as well as speed. So we do all seven within 30 days. So if you sign up with us, we'll have you fully up and running with your full HR department functions within a 30-day time frame. So that's why I say there's unlimited scalability because you're not limited by the amount of recruiters you have, the amount of time that you have there is no limit. I have an entire team that will do everything for you. Literally just point and shoot, you know?
That's really cool, man. And so, for those of us who don't understand what a typical timeline for setting up HR services would be and how impressive the 30 days is, how long would it typically take your competitor to do the same thing?
Well, right now there's not a lot of competitors out there that are doing the way that we're doing it. So for an HR department internally trying to build it up, you typically for like a realistic company, a small organization, after about 20 employees, you'll hire one HR person. That one HR person will typically not be able to do the seven functions of HR. They just can't. They're one person. So likely they will take care of some of the compliance and the recruiting, and that's it. So from there, then they'll grow. So for that one person to do all seven functions, develop the full HR department, and then maybe hire a few more people along the way, it could take more than a year. Like just
So you're
realistically.
cutting this way down, and
Yeah.
uh, obviously informed by your experience building the whole thing for the nonprofit that you were at, right? Like that's clearly why you're able to build this the way that you have built it, because you know what that takes, which I assume informed your 30-day timeline, because that's impressive.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like I went through all the steps. I had to create everything and I was one person doing it. And that was like my one goal. Like my one goal was just doing that as opposed to another person may not have that ability, the know-how or the understanding to do it. So it took me when I first did it internally, it took me about a year to get, and even then it wasn't at the high level. Like it was like a very base um like I couldn't do all the performance management. I couldn't watch all the teams. I couldn't have an open communication. So saying I had it all done in 1 year is actually unrealistic because even then it wasn't to what I'm offering now in 30 days. It was much, much less.
That's cool, man. Is your service something that you can get repeat customers from, because as they scale again, they're going to need your service to build a bigger HR department, or is it kind of a one and done thing?
Ideally, my goal is I actually want to build relationships with all of these clients. I don't want it to be like a one and done thing, but I also don't want to waste anyone's time or, I don't want it to be like a cash cow kind of thing where I'm just pulling money. My ideal, the way that we've been setting it up is I set up an organization, we do like a 6-month contract. Throughout the first few months, I fully set you up. You are then fully running at optimal. We then grow your organization to as high as you want within that 6-month time frame. Because remember, there's no limit to how high you can scale. The only limit comes down to your specific operations. But then if you only have to focus on your operations, you know what I mean? Like it's a completely different
Yeah,
ball
growth
game.
is just happening at light speed, I imagine.
Exactly. There's no limit. And then, so growing to that stage, and then at the end of the 6 months, I actually want to hire you your own HR department, train them on our services, on how we set it up for you. So that way you can then continue going on the entire time frame. We're actually also currently developing our own HR software, which is what helps us with our services. So then we actually want to also offer the services, sorry, for the software. So then at the end of the 6 months, you are fully up and running. You have your own HR department, which has a seamless transition because we train them. And then from there, you have an HR software that you can then move on and move forward with.
And so with that software, is I assume there's some kind of, MRR built in there or something like that, that you're going to be selling that, or is that just kind of part of your package?
The software will be unique. So the software will basically be right now, a lot of organizations, they'll offer a software solution for an HR department. So it's just an HR software, like a human resource information system or a human resource management system. And excuse me. And what that does is basically offering the software that will help you with your employee directory, help you with your recruiting portal, help you basically with all the seven functions that we've discussed. It will actually help you out with all of those with your new internal HR department. So, like I said, I want to build a long relationship with each of these clients, ideally up to like around 5 years is what I would like. So 6 months with the services, push you as hard as we can, help you grow as much as you want to grow. And then from there, we then allow you to utilize the software to continue going, and there's no need to stop, you know?
Dude, that's so awesome. I mean, when I need an HR department, I'm coming straight to you because why else? Well, why go anywhere else, right? Like you've taken the time to explain all this to me, broken down your business to me and the audience. Like, the way you've explained it, people would be fools not to pick up on your service because you have this owner of this company, the CEO, sitting here saying, "I want to develop the long term relationships and help you succeed." Right? That's very much, I guess, not the case with a lot of businesses. It's more greed and how does this affect the bottom line? And I don't give a fuck about you. And you couldn't be more opposite from that. And I think that's amazing, man. I congratulate you, and I'm proud to know you, and you're doing that because there needs to be so much more of that. Because I really genuinely believe there's enough for everybody to go around. There's 6 billion people in this world, and there's no way there's not enough for everybody to get their own piece, right?
100%. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. It really is really weird that people are like so like money hungry and they're so focused on their own stuff that they don't realize that like it's a huge world. Like there's a ton of opportunity out there. Like there's no need to be so focused and so greedy on your own stuff. Like you can help someone else and still get your own, you know?
And I in fact want to argue that, if your sole focus is on money, money's not going to come to you. The more you don't focus on money and just actually focus on being a decent human who helps other people achieve their goals, it seems to me the money comes faster.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with you on that.
Like just really just what you're putting in the universe is coming back to you tenfold. So if that's greed and corruption and just being a shitty human, you're going to get more of that back. I, I don't know. That's what I believe anyway. Your core values we talked about emphasize action over feelings and the importance of the outward action. So how do those values influence the leadership inside of your company, as particularly with you, and form your leadership decisions?
When it comes to the actions part, it's really emphasizing that it's not the outcome that you're looking for when it comes to managing your team. You know, you if especially if it's something that someone can't control. If it's like I want you to have a 25% close rate when it comes to sales, like within like a certain time frame, like that's not necessarily something that they can control. They can call 100 people and they can do 100 reach outs and they can, you know what I'm saying? Like, so it's emphasizing, it's rewarding the action, not the outcome. Because then you also have the problem where the outcome becomes the only thing people care about. And that's where you have people that you pay on an hourly wage and they get something done in 10 minutes and they have to sit around for the next 50 minutes because they're worried you're not going to pay them or you're going to give them another task. So it's really understanding that the action is what matters. It's not the outcome, especially if you or no one else can control what that outcome is.
Yeah, a lot of sales roles would benefit from hearing that philosophy because the turnover in sales is so high because it's really, I work jobs where if you're not making 150, 200 phone calls a day, you're gone. See ya, bye. And it's like, Jesus Christ, man. Like, and you want me to sell like 25 policies a month? Like, fuck. Like, it's so daunting and almost, not impossible, right? Because people are grimy and sleazy. I didn't have it in me to be grimy and sleazy to people. I just couldn't do it. So, no, that's awesome, man. Um, how are you going to expand Omni HR?
Actually, the really cool thing is that OmniHR uses its own technique. So actually, all of the things, all of the functions that we do right now to help out the small to medium sized clients, we actually use internally. So we actually use we practice what we preach. You know, like we actually use the stuff internally what we are selling. So the same seven functions, just growing that
Yeah,
way. You know,
you have infinite scalability because you drink your own Kool-Aid. I think that's awesome, man. Like who would you be to be trying to sell something that you're not buying, right? Like that doesn't make sense.
yep, absolutely. So the goal really is to be number one. You know, I think that we can help out as many people as we can. And Right now there's about 500 HR services companies. That's not a big number. We're unique. We are kind of a standalone organization right now, and I just I just want to live my life as well as I can, push the company forward, and have fun while doing it.
Are you? Are you having fun?
I actually am. I'm having a blast right now.
Yeah. You still enjoy getting up every day and doing what you do? There's no thoughts of man, I don't want to go to work today.
No, this is it. I've actually told my wife about this. I was like, this is it. Like this is what we're doing. I'll do this, and then eventually I'll die and I'll be happy.
And how did your wife take that?
Actually pretty well. She's been super supportive the whole time. Which is a blessing. Like it's just such a wonderful thing to have that. I've seen, like, I have friends personally who have their own businesses and who are trying to do things and they don't have that same support. But my wife does support me. She'll tell me, she's like, hey, like back when I had to work at Domino's and was the CEO of two companies, she didn't laugh at me. She didn't joke around. She was like, is there something that I can do for you? Like, can I help you out? Is there something that you're stressed out about? Can we talk about it? Um, so yeah, just
No, man. The reason I ask that question is because I think it's almost imperative that if you are married or close with someone in and you want to do this, you need that support, right? My wife is constantly walking around the house. I For me it was I went on my ayahuasca journey. I came back and I told her, I'm like, I'm done with everything. I'm going to figure out how to build a digital business. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm going to do it. And she was like, well, you've never made not made good on a promise you've made me, and so I'll support you. And now, as I continue to grow and figure things out, she's constantly walking around the house. I'm so proud of you. Like, you're really making it happen. You know what I mean? And for me, if I didn't have that, if I was fighting the uphill battle with her where she's constantly pushing at me to go get a real job or you'll go back to flying as a career, I don't think I would be at all happy. And I think our relationship would suffer.
yeah. No, 100%. Yeah, if she had told me like, "Hey, you've got to get a real job. Like you've got to go back out there and you've got to do whatever," I probably would have done it. Like cuz my relationship matters more to me than my individual success. So the fact that she didn't do that and the fact she understands what it is that we're trying to do, and she's actually on board with the mission. Like she sees how we interact with clients and she sees that the goal is good. Like the goal is positive, and she's helping me throughout the way.
And I think that speaks to, you found a wife who sees you for who you really are. She understands what drives you and motivates you. And I think, man, that's awesome. That's an awesome feeling. And I'm happy for you, dude. So based on your experiences, what advice would you give to veterans who want to get out and start their own business, become an entrepreneur?
I would say do your due diligence, do some research, but don't get hung up. Everything is going to have its downfalls, everything is going to have its hard times, its hardships, but you have to just overcome them. And you don't do it by thinking about doing it, you don't do it by planning on doing it. You just do it, like you just move forward. If you have an idea, you have a plan, there's no reason you can't set up an LLC within a month. There's no reason. It's so easy to do. If
I was
you
gonna say,
have
shit, you could do it by this afternoon, honestly. I mean, I take the I'm gonna pay somebody to do it route. So I just went to, I think it's called Busy now, but it was Inkfile when I did it. It cost me like $300 and I had a fucking LLC 2 weeks later. Like, it was done.
Yeah, no, I did it myself just because I know how to do the admin side of things. It took me $100 and one afternoon, and I had my business. Like I literally got the document like I think a week later. Like it's it's not hard setting up in Illinois. We're still in Illinois, yeah. But yeah, it's easy. Like it's not hard to set up. The hard part is making it successful. That is the hard part. But same thing. Think about the actions, not about the goals at the end of the line. Have goals, but goals aren't going to bring you to victory, right? Your actions are what will bring you the success.
For sure. And I think it's important too, like, take the time and the $100 in the afternoon to get your LLC set up, because it's the first measurable action you can take to get into business. Because what happens when you do that is then you go apply for something called a Duns number. And now your business is building credit, whether it's making money or not. It exists on paper as a living, breathing thing. So think of it like you as an individual, because that's what it is. And so now it's building credit. And it's cool when you hit like the year mark, I think is when it happened for me. You just start getting basically offers for a lot of free money in the mail. And it's daunting because it's not small amounts of free money. Like obviously it's credit or loans or whatever, so you have to be intelligent about it. But it's really cool when you see like you created this thing, you haven't really done anything with it, and here are all these organizations offering you money, knowing that you now have an opportunity to take some of that money if you need to actually pursue what you want to do. And I think you're right, man. That's an awesome first step to take. And it's $100 depending on the state you live in, and an afternoon, and that's it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so simple, man. That's awesome. What would you say? So here we believe, right? I believe. I don't know if we is. I don't think everybody's on board yet, but I think by the end of me doing what I'm doing, they will be. I believe the military gives us high leverage skills, right? Leadership, problem solving, adaptability, discipline. Of those high leverage skills that translate well into business, what would you say has been the most important one for you and driven you forward building your business? For me, the foundation is very much my discipline. Just the discipline, like you said, to take action every single day, show up every single day, do the things I know that are going to propel this thing forward, no matter how I feel. What would you say that is for you?
Yeah, honestly, I would say discipline as well, like, just the ability of, like I said, it doesn't matter the way that you feel at the time. If it needs to get done, it's gonna get done. But because you already said that, I'm gonna pick something else, alright? That is my actual answer, but,
I think it's
I
cool
would
that you
yeah.
have the same answer, by the way. I mean, because discipline's like the first thing you learn when you go to basic training, right? Like either you learn it or you're like you said, we are going to get strong, really strong, right? Until you do learn discipline. But I was asked this question on LinkedIn a few weeks ago, and I responded like I had to look deep inside myself, but I really think that's what it is, because there are days where I'm just like, I don't want to be in front of my computer today. Like, not that I'm burnout or anything like that. I just would rather be outside or something, but I know this has to get done. And I rely on that discipline. Like, you're going to sit here and you're going to do X, Y, Z. And then when you're done, you can go do whatever else you want.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Like, because at the end of the day, it's your actions that matter. Like, it's not your thoughts. It's not the way that you feel about it. You could feel like absolute crap, right? But if you're telling yourself, this is what I need to do, and then you do it, the way that you feel doesn't matter. You did the thing. You succeeded. And to me, that's the most powerful thing. Like, the only other thing that I would say is prioritizing. Like, that's a really big thing the military does is there will be 100 things that need to be done. They will select the ones and they'll tell you how to do it in what order. And for people that don't know how to prioritize tasks or don't know how, like kind of like when you take off the goggles and you see the world and you're like, well, what do I do now? It's just prioritizing what your focus is and then focusing on that and making it happen. I think that's a really important task that the military also offers.
That's awesome, man. Dude, that's so cool. Any key insights, personal mantras, philosophies that you have that have guided you on your journey and kind of keep you balanced and getting up every morning to do what you do?
It would be it's okay to take a break and it's okay to not be on it 100%. Like, if you take a pivot, if you know that you need to do something and then you happen to, like, maybe you didn't do the action that day and like you took the day off or you did whatever, like that's okay. You just get back on it the next day. It's not, you don't have to be perfect all the time. As long as you're going in the general direction, that's success. And understanding that really helped me out. And it gave me the opportunity to fail, like, there will be a day where I don't want to work, like I don't want to sit on the computer and maybe I don't. But that doesn't mean that I am now a failure. It means that I had a crap day and now I'm about to turn around the next day and do better and move forward and do the things that I know that I need to do. So it's accepting that it's okay to not be perfect.
Yeah, that's great, man. That's such a good one. And you're right. Like, you can take a day off, but that comes with consequences, right? And that work is going to be there waiting on you when you get back. Don't you worry about it. And I find that, like, if I want to take days off, there are things that I can do to get ahead so that I don't have to deal with those consequences, but it still requires the same amount of work. I'm either paying for it on the front end or the back end, you know what I mean? And that's just the way that it goes. So what a great answer, man. That's awesome. Dude, how can everybody get in touch with you to learn more about Omni HR, follow your journey, support you, and let's help Omni HR grow with whatever audience I have. I'm sure you're way ahead of me on that, but man, we love to give back here, and I want to make sure that we get everybody in touch with you if they need your services and can find you.
For sure, yeah. They can find me at www.omnihr.org. We also have a LinkedIn page that, we always are checking the messages and the responses on there. Yeah, 100%. Just reach us out. We also have a YouTube channel to train on different HR tactics and kind of understanding a little bit more about what it takes to be a leader in HR, and as a small business, what it takes to grow.
Awesome, man. And any final thoughts or messages you want to pass on to the listeners before we let you go?
I guess the only big thing is your feelings don't matter. If you have a goal, make it happen.
Yes, sir, man. Ladies and gentlemen, Manuel Martinez, thank you so much for being here, brother. I really appreciate you. I can't wait to see what Omni HR does with its infinite scalability. This time next year, you might be $1 billion company, which would be amazing, man. That would be so cool. So I appreciate your time on a Saturday, nonetheless, right? Talk about doing things you don't want to do, right? This is the sacrifice. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, all that good stuff. Help get this in front of 1 million veterans before I turn 40 next May. And we'll see you guys next week. Everyone, Manuel Martinez.
Thank you very much.
That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at The Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity, or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources, or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.